Welcome back. Now we just added an offset to the socket location on our spring arm component. We're getting ready for aiming. So in this video, we're going to start implementing crosshairs. Now we're going to need some crosshairs textures. So go to my GitHub page, github.com/druidmech, go to UE4 CPP Shooter Series, and in the Assets/Textures folder, you'll see this textures.zip. Click on it and click Download. Find the download location, and you're going to want to extract that zip. Now that you have the textures folder, go back into the Unreal Editor. We're going to create a couple more folders. In the _game folder, let's create a new folder for the HUD, and we'll call it simply HUD all caps. Also in the _game folder, in the Assets folder, we're going to create a new folder called Textures. And in Textures, we'll create a new folder called Crosshairs. Go into the Crosshairs folder and click Add/Import, and select Import to this folder under Import Asset. Find the Textures folder you just downloaded. Inside, open Icons and Crosshairs, and you'll see a bunch of .tga files. I'm going to go ahead and just select all of these and click Open. And now we have all of those textures uploaded into our Crosshairs folder. Now double-click on the first one, CrossQ9, to open it. If you scroll up in the mouse wheel, you'll see a little bit better what this crosshair looks like. You'll see that it's 4 lines with a transparent background. Now in the Details panel, click on the Compression Settings dropdown and select User Interface 2D, in parentheses RGBA. Click Save, and we're going to need to do this for all of these textures because these are going to be used for the user interface. So go ahead and pause this video and open up each of these and set their compression settings to User Interface 2D. Once that's done, now we're going to create a new HUD blueprint. Go into our HUD folder we just created. Right-click and create New Blueprint Class, and click the drop-down under All Classes and type in HUD and select HUD and click Select. And we're going to name this Shooter HUD BP. Now, not all game projects use the HUD class to draw HUD elements to the screen. Sometimes HUD elements are drawn from other classes such as the player controller. We're going to learn how to do that as well in this course, but I'm going to show you several different ways to draw things to the screen, and this is just one of them. We're going to use this class to draw our crosshairs. Now there's a HUD property in the game mode. Let's go to our game mode folder and open Shooter Game Mode Base BP, and you'll see that there's a HUD class. Click the drop down. It's set to the base HUD class, but we're going to set it to Shooter HUD BP. That's the HUD blueprint we just created. Compile and save this and close it. Now just to quickly draw some crosshairs to the screen, we're going to open up our Shooter HUD BP blueprint. In the event graph, let's right-click and type Event Receive Draw, and we'll see Event Receive Draw HUD. This draws to our HUD every frame. It gives us 2 integers which are the size of the screen. When playing from the play-in editor, it's the size of the viewport. We're going to use these so that we can find the center of the screen so we can draw the crosshairs there. I'd like to create a new variable of type vector2d to store the coordinates of the center of the screen. So in the My Blueprint tab, click Add New Variable, and let's call this Screen Center. We'll change its type to vector2d. Let's drag it out and click Set Screen Center. Now we're going to get our size X and size Y and divide these by 2. So drag off, hit the / and choose int divided by int. We'll do this for both of these, and we'll divide each of these by 2. Now, to make a vector 2D from these, they need to be floats. So drag off of one and type to float. This will convert this to a float. Then drag off of the float and type make vector 2D. We can drag off the second one and plug it straight into Y, and we'll automatically get a 2-float conversion node. Since we're dividing X and Y by 2, this will give us the center coordinates for the screen. Plug this return value into the setter for screen center and hook up the execution pin. Next, we're going to draw a crosshairs to the screen using a draw texture node. So drag off and type draw texture. For the texture, we're going to choose cross_q_9. That's one of the crosshairs we just imported that we downloaded from the GitHub page. Now screen X and screen Y are the locations to draw this texture. We're going to use our screen center vector 2D, and we can drag off of it and type break vector 2D, and this gives us the X and Y coordinates. We'll plug X into screen X and Y into screen Y. We also want a screen width and a screen height. I'm going to choose 64 pixels for each of these for the size of the texture. Now texture U width and texture V height. Now texture U width and texture V height should both be 1. This will result in the texture just being drawn once in our 64 by 64 pixel square. If we made this, say, 2 by 1, we'd have double crosshairs, and 2 by 2, we'd have 4 crosshairs, and so on. Let's go ahead and compile and save and hit play, and we'll see that we now have crosshairs drawn to the screen. But the crosshairs is not exactly centered. We're actually drawing the crosshairs such that its top left corner is in the center of the screen. We need to move it over by its half width and move it up by its half height. So let's go back to Shooter HUD BP and add 2 new variables for the half width and half height of our crosshair texture. Since its screen width and height are 64 each, we'll set its half width and half height variables to 32 each. So let's add a new variable, call this crosshair half width. We'll set its type to float, and we'll compile and set its default value to 32. Now that we have crosshair half width and half height, we can subtract these from the X and from the Y before we draw the texture to the screen. So just after breaking screen center to the X and Y, we'll drag off of the X and hit a minus sign and do a float minus float. And we're going to subtract from the X our crosshair half width. And we'll plug that into screen X. And then we'll drag off the Y and type a minus sign, get a float minus float, and subtract crosshair half height from that, and we'll plug that one into the screen Y. Now that we're subtracting crosshair half width from the X and crosshair half height from the Y, we're going to draw this crosshairs moved over by 32 pixels to the left and moved up by 32 pixels as well. So compile that and save it and hit play, and now our crosshairs are exactly in the center of the screen. Now, it's a little low for me. I'd kind of like the crosshairs to be a little bit raised. So I'm going to go ahead and raise it up. And I'll do this by creating a new vector 2D for the crosshair location. So let's add a new variable of type vector 2D, and we'll call this crosshair location. Now we'll set this just after screen center. So we'll drag in a setter for set crosshair location. And what I'd like to do is take the value of screen center, so we'll get a get screen center. We'll break this vector 2D, and I'd simply like to alter the Y. So drag off of the Y, type a minus sign, and let's subtract 50 off of the Y. Now if you didn't know, the Y-axis for the screen starts at 0 in the top and increases as we go down. So subtracting off of the Y for the screen center location actually moves it up. Now let's drag off of one of these and type make vector, choose make vector 2D out of this X and Y. And we'll plug this value into the crosshair location setter. We'll hook up crosshair location's output pin to draw texture. And instead of the screen center, we're going to use crosshair location instead when we draw the texture. So we can make some comments here. We can highlight these first set of nodes, hit C to comment them, and say get screen center. Now we're going to highlight these nodes down here, hit C to comment them, and we're going to say raise screen center by 50. And then finally, this set of nodes here, we're going to comment these and say move X by half width and Y by half height. Now let's compile and save and go ahead and hit play. And now we can see our crosshairs is raised up a little bit, just about next to the shoulder of our character. Okay, that concludes this video. We just created a blueprint based on the HUD class to draw crosshairs to the screen. Now there are other ways to draw HUD elements to the screen, and we will use different methods throughout this course. This is just one of them. Now you'll notice if we shoot that the smoke trail shows us that the bullet is not going towards the crosshairs. In the next video, we're going to set it up so that we actually shoot in the direction of the crosshairs. So stay tuned. We'll see you in the next video.